Here are some of the highlights from episode 1 with attorney Joe Freed. So, on a more serious note, how has, with these hearings and appearances over Zoom, how has your practice specifically changed since the global pandemic? How are you doing things differently?
Well, the biggest thing that's changed, I think, is the expectation and the ability for in-person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so all of the changes I would talk about would stem from that, because in some ways, I think it's really been great, and in other ways, it's been not so great. And the parts that are, lean toward the great side is I've practiced in, I think, 40 or maybe even more than 40 states. And so before the pandemic, I was on airplanes every single week, and a lot of times 2 or 3 times in a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I got better over time at being able to shorten those trips and get back home, but I was gone an awful lot. And it takes all kinds of tolls on you when you're gone, on relationships, on your health, on your ability to schedule anything with any kind of normalcy. And so when everything started to move to virtual, I've stopped being on airplanes as much. I still travel a little bit. There's some things that I've gone to live, but I have participated in everything but a full-blown trial. I mean, I've done depositions, I've done hearings, I've done different kinds of hearings, all kinds of meetings of various types. And it's not the same as being live by any stretch. It's not.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what do you think is
well, for
exactly
me,
missing?
I know you'll appreciate what I'm saying, because I think you and I are alike in a sense that we both believe in sort of the energy that's going on in between people in an environment, and that's different. You miss, when you can be there in somebody's eyes, and you can. I don't know how to describe it other than with the word energy.
Yeah.
That's not there, and so there's sincerity that is hard to convey to people. There's a lot of, when you do the kind of work that I do, which I know we're going to talk a little bit about, kind of, that's very deeply human and sometimes very, very painful. It's different to be with someone on Zoom as opposed to when you can sit there, and sometimes it's not the words, it's not the look, it's not the expression, it's just simply being there beside somebody, feeling the energy of the situation. That if you're open from an intuitive perspective to what's going on, something magical happens. And so I think there's less of that. At the same time, when you factor in the cost associated, and I'm not talking about money, although you could certainly look at it money also. I'm talking about all those other costs, the spontaneity in your life, the planning, the health issues, the relationship issues, the things you're going to miss by sitting around in airports waiting for airplanes. I'm at a point now where I'm saying, for most things, it's good enough. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. And if you say, would you rather go back to the way it was before on those kind of things? No. I see moving forward from here, when we're fully and completely recovered from COVID, I think the world is still going to be left a different place than it was before. And I think it has to do with this expectation of in-person. I mean, it used to be, I never would have dreamt of being in front of most judges on a camera.
Right.
I would have felt like they would look differently at me, not think that I was less serious. I would have never imagined meeting a client for the first time, or having a client talk to me about the death of their child, or the struggle of what it's like to be in the wheelchair for the rest of their life, or what it's like to be a caretaker for someone who used to be brilliant, who is now brain injured. and to ask you to open up to me by Zoom,
Right.
never would have. Now that has changed because not necessarily because I feel good about doing that, but because that's the expectation. And the longer we keep doing this, the more that I think has forever changed.
Yeah, I think people sort of we have all together made a shift, and that shift has become the norm. And so now that we sort of accept it, it really feels organic in some way. It feels like people actually are even more available than they were before because you could just hop on a Zoom meeting and, have the same outcome in some ways that you would if you took a flight to Miami Beach to meet with a group of lawyers for a case. So are you doing the new cases that come in? Are you meeting with the clients virtually, or are you?
I,
Oh, you are.
I met with a client. Now sometimes it's live as well. I've done some live, and I'm not. Maybe I should be more careful. I'm not. I don't think I'm being irresponsible when it comes to COVID, but I'm not. I'm not personally overly worried about it. I mean, I don't want to get anybody else sick. I certainly don't want to get sick. So I'm being careful in that regard if I'm meeting with people, especially if they're vulnerable.
Yeah.
But I give the clients the choice. So I'm meeting with a new set of clients tomorrow. Very serious injury of a child case, and they asked, so can we just do it on Zoom? We've got a lot going on, and there were some vulnerable people, and I'm happy to do that. In my mind, I still have that there will come a time when I'll sit in the room with them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think even for me, because sort of my work follows the same patterns of your work, and I miss the human interaction. I miss that energy exchange and being able to be fully present with someone over dinner for 2 hours or at an event where you're engaged and saying hello to so many people. There's a really cool frequency about that, right? It's just you're seeing, exchanging. People are coming from different walks of life, and it's like, oh my gosh, you see everybody there, and there's an excitement to it. I miss that. That is, as much as I've been doing other things, like I have gotten in better shape and I'm eating better and I'm meditating more and I have more time with my kids. I love all of that. But I think a part of me is wondering, like, okay, when am I going to be free again? When can I travel again? So that's another thing I miss traveling and going places. I assume you're doing less of that in terms of personal travel or pleasure?
I am. It's a lot less, but I'm doing some. I'm not. But I'm doing less, and I miss it. And I think you really nailed it. It's the idea of being fully present, which especially on Zoom now. Like I feel like I can be fully present with you on this because you and I are having this whatever you call this. Okay. But get on a Zoom thing and you got 8 boxes, and everybody's on at the same time, and it's people are struggling with when can I talk? I have to wait for somebody else to finish.
Right.
It's and there's snafus that are going on. Very, very difficult not to check out and go shopping a little bit. So I think in today's world where we're more and more challenged, I think, from an attention perspective anyway, because of technology. I wonder about that with something like Zoom, being able to be fully present without having, your email open on the sidelines, and checking it. And, it's just like, in some ways, like the old way this would come up is when, and I'm sure you probably had this situation, you're sitting trying to have a close conversation with somebody, and they're checking their phone every minute.
Yeah.
and it just
Yeah.
pulls
Mhm.
you out, pulls the whole thing out.
Mhm.
Well, I think that there's more chance of that in this situation. There's just so many distractions that can happen.
There is. There is. There's no doubt. I think my husband has a good expression. I don't know if it's his original expression, but he says, "Who knows what's good or bad?" Right? With every scenario or situation, who knows what's good or bad? And even in the scenarios where think there's that essence is missing, that substance is missing. I think there is pros to everything.
Yeah.
So we'll find out. I'm certainly interested to see how this evolves over time because um, you're right. We're not going to go back to exactly how things were before.